eventually as the bandwidth allows. And away we go. So it's April, fools. I mean, no, it was April Fools. Excuse me, my word. Those commas can really get in the wrong place. So calm it down. I didn't mean to insult you. All right. Well, anyway, this is going to be, the theme for the month is the wise fool, the wise fool. And so today's sermon is the wisdom of a fool. And last April Fools, I think the sermon fell on April Fools. And so I did what I don't normally do, which is I read the whole thing from my notes as a way of joking myself into thinking that I was somebody who followed rules. And today, I had another wild and wacky idea. I know that's so out of character for me to have wild and wacky ideas, but I wanted to start with a passage, one of my favorite passages from a scripture. So this is a way in a Unitarian Universalist fellowship of flipping things on its head. We'll start our sermon with a scripture reading, and this comes from the Tao Te Ching. So as you may know, my training toward ordination involved both Buddhist and Taoist lineages. And so the Tao Te Ching is one of our classic scriptural texts in Taoism. And so I'd like to read you a passage. And this is verse number 20 from the Tao Te Ching. And then we're going to do a little practice they call, in Christianity, they call Lectio Divina, which often means you would meditate on a specific phrase, but we're going to do an interpretation of the entire scripture today because it's close to April Fools. And so we can be Unitarians and do scriptural interpretation as our sermon just on this day. So here we go. Verse number 20. Lao Tzu says, "Between yes, sir, and certainly not, how much difference is there? Between beauty and ugliness, how great is the distinction? He whom others fear, likewise cannot but fear others. How confusing! There is no end to it all. Joyful are the masses, as though feasting after the great sacrifice of oxen, or mounting a terrace in springtime. Motionless am I, without any sign, as a baby that has yet to gurgle. How dejected, as though having nowhere to return. The masses all have more than enough. I alone am bereft. I have the heart of a fool. How muddled. The ordinary man is luminously clear. I alone seem confused. The ordinary person is searchingly exact. I alone am vague and uncertain. How nebulous as the ocean. How blurred as though without boundary. The masses all have a purpose. I alone am stubborn and uncouth. I desire to be uniquely different from others by honoring the mother who nourishes." So this is one of my favorite and least favorite passages in the Tao Te Ching. It's one of my favorite and least favorite at the same time because I think there's a lot in there to relate to. And then there's a lot in there that's sort of like things that make you go, it's kind of like, what in the world do you mean? So I relate to being stubborn and uncouth. I don't know, let me look on gallery view. Raise your hand, class, if you relate to being stubborn and uncouth. Oh, excellent, excellent, good. I'm in good company then this morning with the Stubborn and Uncouth April Fools Society. How wonderful. But then there are some passages in here that are kind of confusing. So what I thought to do, again, because it's April, it's sort of like flip the script month for me. That's how I like to do it. And I thought I would go through and actually do this Taoist and Buddhist practice where you take a sacred text and then you give a line-by-line interpretation. If that bores you to death, don't worry, I will never do it again until next April, most likely. But if you really like it, then let me know, and who knows, I could change my ways and do this more often. So I'll be reading from my teleprompter here, which is the same computer that I'm broadcasting to you from. So if I look like I'm not meeting your eyes, we're on computers, you guys. I can't actually meet your eyes. Like, I don't even know where my eyes show up on your screen. So just live with it and we'll have a lot of fun. Okay, so first line. Fooling myself already. Between yes, sir, and certainly not, how much difference is there? And I think this one, I think Lao Tzu is employing this message, this tactic, where he throws out this line and then you're supposed to go like, wait, what? There's a lot of difference between yes, sir, and certainly not. Like, those are about as different as you can get. But he's saying, oh, how much difference is there between the two? So we're supposed to start scratching our head. It's this ancient teaching technique where you make the brain curious. I think he's trying to make us curious in our brain. And go like, what are you talking about, dude? Or dudette. Lao Tzu might have been a dudette, or a gender non-binary, or gender non-conforming, or we don't know who they might have been. But they go on to explain in the next line, which says, between beauty and ugliness, how great is the distinction? And I think this starts to get back to it, because where does beauty lie, class? Put in the chat box if you remember where beauty lies. Beauty lies in the... Donna's mouthing the words to me. I see. That's right. In the eye of the beholder. Thank you, Sue. She got it in the chat box. Beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. So I read my notes here. So yes, what Lao Tzu is talking about is opinions. In these first two lines, Lao Tzu is talking about opinions. So obviously we know that what I consider art might not be what you consider art. We could go to a virtual museum someday on a social distancing date, and we could see, and you could be like, oh my gosh, what a piece of art. And I go like, yeah, what a piece of work. And we could find out that beauty truly does lie in the eye of the beholder. Or I could get this up on YouTube and you could go like, listen to my minister. Wow, his heart is so open, and blah, 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 blah. And then your friend is like, I'm not sure about this guy. And now I'm not sure about you either for sharing it to me, right? So between beauty, Reverend Fa Jun, the angelic genius wonder, and ugliness, Reverend Fa Jun, the bleeding heart pie in the sky liberal idealist with some crazy notions, how much difference is there? There's a lot of difference. And he's letting us know that he's cluing us into what we already know, that comes from us. The beauty isn't so much in the thing. I mean, you might kind of all agree that like an unspoiled mountain is beautiful, but not all vulture capitalists would agree with you. They would think that the spoiled mountain is more beautiful. So these are actually subjective experiences, and this is a deep philosophical hole. We'll go into that a different day. But let's just say we can note that the experience of beauty, the experience of art, the experience of wonder is coming from the beholder, not so much the beholded. Beholden? No, that means you're in debt. Anyway, beheld. The beheld. Okay. So let me get my teleprompter back up. Oh yeah. So beauty's in the eye of beholder, but guess what is also in the eye of the beholder? And this is kind of the point of today's talk: certainty. Certainty is in the eye of the beholder. Now note, I'm not telling you that facts are in the eye of the beholder, right? 2 + 2 = 4. That's kind of, I think we can all agree that's an objective thing. That's an objective thing until, I mean, I don't know, they're teaching it in a different way in school now that a lot of parents are mad about. But anyway, I think we can agree that facts are not in the eye of beholder, but the experience of certainty is. Whether you're convinced by those facts, what facts convince you actually depend on you. So the second line in the scripture allows us to look back at the first line, and Lao Tzu asks, between yes, sir, and certainly not, how much difference is there? And he's doing this quirky thing that if we went back and listened, we'd say, well, there's no difference in the fact that those are both experiences of certainty coming from the eye of the beholder. The feeling of, yes, I agree. The way we save America from every problem it has is to build a great wall, right? You can be certain in that. And then others of us say, that's the stupidest idea, certainly not. And all of those experiences of certainty are coming this way rather than this way. There are facts to be found, but the certainty, the conviction, the feeling of knowing is coming from the beholder. Okay, whew, we got through 2 lines. Let's keep it going. I'm going to check my time and see how many lines we got. Okay, then the next line. He whom others fear likewise cannot but fear others. Wait, what? We were talking about the eye of the beholder, and now he went off in a totally different direction into he whom others fear must blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's get down into it. It does actually fit the flow of the passage. So he's taking an odd turn here. So it looks like he's going, so enough about that, eye of the beholder. Now, let me go Gandhi on you and say, violence begets violence. An eye for an eye will leave the whole world blind. It seems like he's giving us a different sermon, but he is in fact, and pardon me if I default to the masculine pronoun, that's how I studied it in the books for 30 years. So today, Lao Tzu's a man, but nobody actually believes that, especially not Ursula Le Guin. So, is he doing a different sermon and doing a Gandhi thing? No. I think what Lao Tzu is pointing out is what in Buddhism we call the emptiness of strategies. The emptiness of strategies. So you're supposed to be imagining like a mob boss or an ancient Chinese warlord who said, you know, as a child, he said, you know what I hate? I hate being afraid. I wish I was never afraid. And he got this great strategy. I know how I'll not be afraid. I'll make everyone else fear me. I've got it. And then he goes throughout his life, and finally he becomes the biggest mob boss around. And you all know, because you watch these movies, what's it like to be a mob boss or a warlord is that you're constantly watching your back for everyone else who's trying to take you out. And so the strategy of I'll be free from fear by making everyone else fear me actually just resulted in more fear for our budding young warlord. I call this, in my Buddhist translation, this is the emptiness of strategies. So I think Lao Tzu is using an extreme example to point out the emptiness of our own strategies. So sorry, this might be triggering for you, but some of us have a favorite political candidate. You don't have to raise your hand. I can guess. Some of us have a favorite political candidate. And we might even get mad at people with different favorite political candidates. Okay, don't self-identify, but have you ever seen someone get mad at someone who had a different favorite political candidate than them? Have you witnessed this? Yeah, wow. And so what Lao Tzu is pointing to in the emptiness of strategies is that we couldn't get mad at the other if we didn't think that our favorite strategy was the one that would work. Our strategy is the one that would work, right? So let's say I loved Bernie Sanders. Okay, this is not an endorsement, but I personally, just like as a mensch that I see on the TV sometimes, I kind of love Bernie Sanders. I think he's just a cool guy. We can debate about it later, whatever. If I were to get mad at you if you didn't like him, that implies that I think a vote for Bernie is a vote for all of this stuff, but that discounts everything else that could go wrong. I'm like, yeah, the healthcare. And I have to sort of discount the pushback from the people who wouldn't want that. You know, our strategies, if we hold to them really tightly as the right strategy, we have to get rid of a whole other set of information that should color our choice. So if you had the wisdom of a fool, which is what we're all coming around to in this talk, you could still have a favorite political candidate, right? you can have the wisdom of a fool and still have a favorite political candidate, but it becomes really hard to get mad, to polarize, to demonize, to dehumanize another for having a different strategy than yours, because you can see the flaws in yours and you can see the possible benefits in theirs, because certainty comes from the eye of the beholder, just like beauty and ugliness. Okay, I hope he helps us out a little more. This is hard stuff that we are dealing with. Okay, I think we're only really able to get mad about it because of our degree of sureness that our strategy is the one that will bring the most benefit. Okay, so this doesn't mean abandon all hope, ye who enter here, none of your strategies are work. No, we're still going to vote, probably. Most of us are going to keep not smoking, or we're going to like quit vaping or whatever it is you're doing for your health, right? You're going to eat your vegetables. You're going to wash your hands and social distance, right? You're not going to, well, I guess, you know, I could still die even if I ate a carrot. No, you're still going to try to find some vitamin A and do good things for yourself. But I think what Lao Tzu is pointing to is the same thing that's pointed to in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, the book of Koheleth, where the famous line Koheleth says over and over, vanity of vanities. Everything is vanity and grasping at the wind. And this is really echoed because in this book of Ecclesiastes, he goes through and he says things like, and I've seen the race is not won by the swiftest. The war is not won by the strongest. It's just like, he's just like, oh, there's all this randomness. What can we count on at all in a world where randomness reigns? Lao Tzu says, how confusing. Is there no end to it all? And I've come to call this feeling that he's pointing out the Game of Thrones principle. Did any of you watch this show, Game of Thrones? Also not an endorsement, especially after the final season. And don't watch it with your kids anywhere near the house. Your kids actually have to be down the street so that the psychic profanity that might come, it's just like, it's nowhere near them. Anyway, but I can tell you about the Game of Thrones principle. So I almost quit in season 4. I'm kind of sad I didn't, because what I realized, that's Maria laughing because we watched it together. She saw the whole thing, is that, you know, for all this time, for years and years of story, people are fighting and scheming and manipulating, and not a single one of them is ever happy, even when they win, right? Because they win and then they're like fighting and scheming more, and then their best laid strategies are being taken down and crumbled, and, you know, other things that I won't even mention. And so I started to realize, like, wow, what the use of all of this, like, we're going to bring victory to Westeros, and this, my plan is a great plan. And maybe if they could chill and like cooperate for a minute, or leave the Game of Thrones behind, there might be a chance, like, none of the common people weren't happy, the rulers weren't, nobody was happy playing surety from the eye of the beholder. My strategies are the best strategies. I will win and I will never be afraid by making others fear me. Okay, moving right along. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity and grasping at the wind. Then Lao Tzu says, joyful are the masses as though feasting after the great sacrifice or mounting a terrace in spring. Motionless am I without any sign as a baby that has yet to gurgle. How dejected, as though having nowhere to return. The masses all have more than enough. I alone am bereft. I have the heart of a fool. How muddled. The ordinary person is luminously clear. I alone seem confused. The ordinary person is searchingly exact. I alone am vague and uncertain. So is it just me, or is this the worst advertisement for Taoism ever? Right? You're like, oh, hey, become a Taoist. You can be confused and muddled, and like everybody else is going to have enough, but you're not going to. You're going to be dejected and confused. So we got to ask, like, bro, what are you talking about, Lao Tzu? I just almost decided I was going to quit the Taoist church. We're studying these Asian philosophies, says the notes of Reverend Fa Jun, so we can get more clear, so we can finally get some answers, not get more muddled. Here's what I think he's saying. To the untrained, in terms of training in these meditative disciplines and philosophies, it feels good to be certain. And we can relate to this, right? Doesn't it feel good? Like you finally found the answer, you found the plan. It feels good to be certain, and it feels dangerous to be confused. But to the trained person, it feels dangerous to be certain. It feels dangerous to be certain. So when the moment of certainty, of surety grabs your mind, you should go like, oh, wow, I think that's the fast thinking circuit of my brain that jumps to conclusions because it wants to feel safe. It wants a trajectory. It doesn't yet feel good to be confused, but the masters tell us that we can form a relationship with unknowing and the unknown where we feel comfortable even when we are confused. When we feel comfortable even when we're confused. So if we took out our cultural associations about like what it means to be muddled and confused and dejected, and we thought about this in terms of someone who was going for like comfort with the unknown, and we read Lao Tzu's passage, which I won't read again for you in time, but he says like, oh, the masses are all certain and they're clear and they've got a great sense of direction. And we should think like, yeah, that's how Hitler sent those people off to war, right? The Hitler youth were sparklingly clear and crisp in their little jackboots, and and off they marched with the force of certainty. And to be a confused person in that society is a virtue. To be someone who says, I'm not sure of my direction yet, I'm going to pause and think about it for a minute, is a virtue. So, okay, it is an advertisement for Taoism. We're going to be dejected. Woo! We're going to be purposeless. Wow! We're going to be muddled. Oh, man, this is going to be great. Follow my religion of Taoism, and you too can think everything's murky and misty and hard to tell. Huzzah! All right, coffee's kicking in. I switched to medium roast. It's just a little bit more caffeinated. Here we go. So Lao Tzu is exhorting us not to take refuge in this kind of certainty, to learn to familiarize ourselves with the vague and the uncertain. He says, how nebulous as the ocean, how blurred as if without a boundary. And this without a boundary is really cool if you're like a systems complexity thinker, right? Because boundaries don't actually exist. Boundaries are cool. Nodes are cool to think, oh yeah, that node actually exists. But the links are actually much more of what makes up reality. Linkages, interconnections are much more real than self-existent nodes. How muddled, as if without a boundary. So I feel like Lao Tzu could be talking about any of the wicked problems that face our global community today. If you think the answer is clear-cut, you are probably thinking of the wrong answer. Did you hear me use the word probably? I'm following my own rules. You're probably thinking of the wrong answer. I can't know for sure. How are we going to stave off this virus? Well, obviously, we'll just have to use this one experimental drug. We'll have full churches by Easter. I'm sure of it. If you're that certain, you're probably not thinking about it right. And the other pet strategies, we'll just quarantine everybody for 18 months until the vaccine is developed. And then, oh, well, if they don't like the vaccine, there's also a lot of challenges in that strategy, right? I'm not saying any of these strategies are right or wrong, but if we just say, yeah, that's it, it's clear, let's go, we're ignoring an awful lot of complexity. We're ignoring an awful lot of the known. So we crave the known, we crave the bright, we crave the clear. But how much we know versus how much we don't know, the don't know is always more because there's an infinite amount of unknown, at least as far as I know. There's always going to be more that you don't know than you do. The wisdom of a fool is recognizing that this is the case and learning to get comfortable with the unknown, because she's always going to be there for you If we learn to treat her as an ally instead of an enemy, we can come into right relationship with her. Okay. We've already seen the challenges involved here, and perhaps we felt how the most reasonable sounding voices are not just the ones making evidence-based claims, but also the ones who sound the most humble. The most ridiculous sounding voices are usually the ones that speak with the most certainty. Let's finish off our scripture. The masses all have a purpose. I alone am stubborn and uncouth. Okay, stubborn and uncouth. I didn't get to tell you last time in our permaculture talk, the number one tool of a permaculturist, I won't go Socratic and ask you to guess. I'll just tell you for sake of time, the number one tool of a permaculture gardener is the hammock, primary tool of the permaculture gardener, because they want to observe. Observation is the fundamental principle of design. In the quote we had from Bill Mollison last week, he talked about the distinction between protracted observation rather than protracted and meaningless labor. Protracted observation rather than protracted and meaningless labor. And this is how permaculture aims to design systems that work in harmony with nature, to actually reduce the amount of labor, or if you're laboring, to have it be meaningful, to have it actually mean something. Okay, when we do this kind of observation, says my notes, I hope I didn't write anything questionable, I'm just gonna read them to you. When we do, an incomplete sentence, retro. When we're doing this kind of observation, we are going to be uncouth. We're actually going to be transgressive to the cultural trances that say, you need to do this now. We're certain that right now this is the answer. And if you don't jump right now out of the fear and anger appeal rhetoric that I'm giving you, you're a fool. I'm asking you to be a fool. Of course, we need to act on what we need to act on. Engage in social distancing. Our state and our fellowship were early adopters in social distancing. Awesome. So I'm not saying don't be an early adopter. I'm saying check the impulse to jump. Check the impulse to go and do, especially when people are trying to drive you with anger and fear, which catalyzes our little human, our cute, wonderful, sweet human brains that are so quick to jump to limbic system overdrive and out of creative, abstract, and empathetic thinking. Okay, wrapping this one up. Be uncouth to those cultural trances that would have you jump to join them. Be stubborn and curmudgeonly. Be a stubborn curmudgeon and stay in your hammock and keep your mind wide open to suss out all the angles and vectors and valences. Who's willing to be a curmudgeon? Woohoo! All right. Oh, good, good. So curmudgeonly, let me give you the last notes and then we're going to get on out of here for today. So curmudgeon is a great word, and that's the type of curmudgeon I'd like to ask you to be with me. There's another type of curmudgeon. You've met them. And the last point I want to give you is the distinction between maturing and aging. The distinction between maturing and aging. The curmudgeon is often a trope that's applied to the elderly. So how do you become an elder instead of a curmudgeon? I believe that maturation involves opening the mind to be able to adopt more and more perspectives, to be able to adopt more and more perspective, to see more of reality and assess them all before jumping to conclusions. I think of this mind as like an open house with a beautiful collection of mementos. Maybe I was inspired by those paintings I saw, you know, and they were all the other day in someone's house. They selected only the ones that meant the most. And then the rest of the house, there's time for a lot of people to come in and have tea and express their opinions, or maybe a new piece of art will go up. The curmudgeon's mind is like a hoarder's mind. There's a lot of boxes of stuff and not a lot of room for anything else. So I believe that the wisdom of the fool is how to mature rather than to age, how to learn to love the uncertainty and the unknowing that surrounds us, and to take the known and the unknown, and rather than have them in battle, to allow them to learn to dance together. And with that, I think Dave heard my segue. We're going to allow them to learn to dance together. So let's highlight Dave, and we'll have one final song, which is going to be Let It Be a Dance. I'll mute myself. Maybe my host can. Oh, yeah, good job, host.
All right. Now I'm unmuted. All right, I'm going to put Baxter down. Bye, Baxter. Can you hear me? I think you can. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let the dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words. And do the smile sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the beat. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Where am I going? Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like the color with the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. Let us dance with you. For the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star goes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance. See you next week.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for joining on. That concludes our service today. Let's me and Dave sing our final benediction, and then I'll keep the room open in case we want to chat for a few minutes after.
Right. Joy, love, peace in our hearts until we meet again. Let joy
and love and peace
in
be
our
in
hearts
our hearts until we
meet again.
Yes,
Joy,
Dave.
love, peace in our hearts until we meet again. Let joy and love and peace be in our hearts until we meet again. That lag will kill you every time.
Lao Tzu told me to be a laggard, but I guess this wasn't the moment for it. So here we are.
See you guys at noon on my Facebook live stream. Some of you.
See Dave at noon. Let's have our host cancel the recording or stop the recording, and we'll take